what we are trying to build here is this mythical, personalized digital math teacher. I don't think the technology is there yet, but whoever builds this, I think will come from the math interventions background, which is what we have as well, because that's where the knowledge is. That's most personalized treatment you can get when it comes to math, especially when you have some disorders or some special education needs.
Welcome to the EdTech Founders podcast from EdTech Garage. In this podcast, we interview passionate founders and key players supporting early stage EdTech founders from across Europe. Hello everyone. I'm Frank Albert Coates, the founder of EdTech Garage, and we're back with episode 3 in our third season of the EdTech Founders podcast. Today I'm talking to Michal Hudeček, who is the CEO of Levebee and a serial entrepreneur with 20 years of experience in online business. Levebee makes learning easier, more effective, and fun for kids in areas such as math, reading, and languages. His background combines deep technical knowledge with business skills proven by multiple exits. He's based in Prague, the Czech Republic. We're talking about how the international expansion is challenged by the fragmentation of educational markets, that the biggest challenge is understanding and digitizing the implicit knowledge and decision-making processes of teachers, that understanding pedagogical research and focusing on the educational value is important for EdTech startups, and lots more. Stay tuned for the interview. Hello everyone, we're back with a new episode in the EdTech Founders podcast, and today I'm really happy to have Michal from Levebee with us. Hi Michal, how are you doing?
Hello, thanks. Everything's fine, doing well. Thanks for having me.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for coming on board. And we've been speaking a couple of times before, and I've been seeing you around the EdTech Garage, but I thought it was time to get the full story from your, I would say, exciting ventures, because have been doing so many things over the last year, but recently with Levebee in the K-12 space. So maybe you want to start off with just giving us a 30-second elevator pitch of what Levebee is.
Sure. So Levebee is an app that is helping all kids to learn maths. And by all kids, we actually mean all kids, including kids with special education needs or from disadvantaged backgrounds. And the way we do it is that we are digitizing what's happening during math interventions, which means we are not only digitizing the learning materials, but also the pedagogy behind the whole process.
Great. Yeah, that was below 30 seconds. So I think it qualifies. Thank you. So yeah, let's get a bit deeper, and if you want to sort of go back to when you started in EdTech and why did you do it and why did you end up creating this company?
My journey to EdTech was not as straightforward path, let's put it that way. I actually started coding eShops and CRM systems when I was 15, and I started my own projects back then. I was even studying the computer science high school, but at some point I realized that I could learn more about technology by myself, but when it comes to business, it's better to learn from someone else's mistakes, which is why I decided to study University of Economics. And this is where I met my co-founder, who brought me into EdTech, and we eventually launched together Levebee. So it was through him that I learned about EdTech, and I actually realized that it's a perfect match for me. It combines all the passions that I found very interesting. It combines the technology, it combines the business and marketing, but it also allows me to do a bit more of the research and the science and the education, which is another thing. The backup plan I could have if everything fails is I might be a science teacher. That's what I think would be fun for me. So these three things are all combined together, and we have a lot of discussions with my other co-founder, Mrs. Renata Wolfová. She's a special education teacher, so we exchange a lot of pedagogical books and research. And my wife is a teacher as well, so this serves as a topic that we discuss a lot during the dinners and walks and vacations. So since then, I think I've been hooked.
Nice. I think those are all good reasons to be in this field. And maybe particularly why K-12 maybe, and not sort of the other areas of education.
I think it's very important to start from the very beginning. One of the EdTech startups we were doing before was also about reading, but it was for effective reading for adults. And we learned that, yes, you can only fix so much when the students are 20, but you should really look back when it's all starting. And the same with maths. Yes, you can have an app for teaching fractions, but you can never do that completely right for the kids with special education needs, for example, because one of the barriers might be that they don't know the previous concepts in maths. So you actually have to start from the early math concepts from the kindergarten to be able to eventually learn fractions. So, and this allows us to actually go back, sometimes even years back, in the curriculum to fix the gaps. And without that, it's really, for certain kids, impossible to learn fractions. So I think it works better if you start from the very beginning and then work your way up.
That makes a lot of sense, of course. And could you say something about the company and sort of what stage you're in terms of, I don't know, fundraising and market expansion and things like that?
Yes, we have now more than 500 schools on an annual subscription. We are getting close to 400,000 students in the app. And the company is financially sustainable. We are not looking for funds right now. We might be in the future when we decide to expand or find out the specific strategy to expand to bigger countries. But currently we are not forced to. So that's the stage we are in. We have been around for the company itself around 9 years now. But we started as a reading app in Czech for young kids. But we expanded with reading to Slovakia and Poland. And now for the last 2 years, we are working on maths, which allowed us to expand to even more countries. We now have pilots in 15 countries running and trying to learn what's the best way to go to market in other countries.
And I know this is a big area where we've discussed it a bit before, going to market. So what are sort of the biggest challenges when you are looking at your go-to-market strategy and deciding where and when to go?
Especially in Europe, the biggest challenge is the fragmentation of the education markets. And they are much more different than definitely I imagined before. I think most people imagine. There are, first of all, like the organizational, administrational things like who can buy software or who cannot. We come from the Czech Republic, so the schools here are very independent. I think the independency index is like one of the highest in the world, and it's on one side is a problem for the government to enforce any kind of policies, which is troublesome in some areas, but for us it allowed us to go from the bottom. So we could really persuade the teachers and show them that the app is helping the kids, then they can just go to the headmaster and they will buy it. But in other countries, in most of the other countries, to be true. This is not the case. You have to go through the municipalities or administrations. The schools don't really buy software themselves. It's usually somehow centralized. And that means for us that we are talking to completely different people. We have to persuade the administrators, not the teachers. So that's definitely been a challenge. There are cultural differences as well. What do you think is a good teaching? What's the prevailing philosophy? Whether you should be teaching more explicitly or more like discovery-based learning in some countries still is a thing. The differences are actually much, much bigger. And yes, there is also language. Recently we learned that even language, even though we are working on math, which you would say is kind of universal, the language influences a lot what kids struggle with. So for example, in English, of course, you have 11, 12, 13, 14, which is suddenly two different names for the numbers. Or when it comes to the terminology for geometry, you have in Czech, if you have the triangle that has all the same sides, the name, official name you learn at school is all the same sides triangle. So if you have a test and they ask you, for example, PISA test, it is actually in PISA test. So they ask you which triangle is all the same sides, you immediately know what to look for. But in English, they have Latin names for them. So it's much more difficult. You actually have to know what the Latin name means to be able to find it. So there are definitely some language dependencies as well we are discovering and have to adjust the app accordingly.
And if we move on to the team, could you say something about how you found the team? I heard about your co-founder, but like how did you find the rest of the team, and any sort of specific things you would say about how you work together?
Sure. Actually, the initial team was found and organized by my co-founder Michal Hudeček. He actually found Renata Wolfová, the doctor and the special education teacher that is now the chief of methodology. He had also assembled the first programmers and graphic designers. So that's definitely to his credit. But recently, after the COVID, we have closed the office completely because no one wanted to go there anymore, which turned out to be a blessing because we were able to find people outside Prague as well, and that really opened a lot of opportunities for us. We could find much higher quality people if we didn't require them to come physically to Prague. And Prague, for some reason, is a headquarter for a lot of development centers of big corporations. So it's hard to find people here. The unemployment rate is just zero or like minus something. So that helped a lot. So now it's me, Dr. Wolfová, two programmers and two marketers, one for the Czech market, one for the international market, and one customer support. So these are 7 of us that are full-time. But in total, there is about 20 of us, more than 20 of us. But that includes the teachers, translators from the other countries that are helping us with the pilots.
And if you look at the business and the idea, what will make you succeed, and what would you say is your secret sauce?
What we are trying to build here is this mythical, personalized digital math teacher. I don't think the technology is there yet, but whoever builds this, I think will come from the math interventions background, which is what we have as well, because that's where the knowledge is. That's most personalized treatment you can get when it comes to math, especially when you have some disorders or some special education needs. Also, I think you will need to be able to build fast, but in the long run, which is important to add, because it's easy to build fast in the short term when you can take shortcuts. But as I said, we are around for around 10 years actually, so not yet, but it will be 10 years in a few months. And we are still able to add new features quickly, even with such an old and huge code base. So I think that's very important as well. We are mostly working on new features, not debugging whatever we break. And the third kind of ingredient is having the channel to the customers. So as I said, the technology is not truly there for everything, even though there's a big hype about the AI, but I don't think it's still there, but it might come. And when it comes, we need to be able to, first of all, develop the features quickly, but then we need to be able to get them to the users, which is why I think it's important to build the brand and build the customer base, even now when we still are not fully personalized AI teacher, but it's important to be able to get it to the users quickly. This is why we try to have the direct contact with the teachers and the students, and to build the brand, to be trusted and have the expertise to build on.
So many would argue with you and say that, with the release of these large language models, we've already in sort of next generation of what is possible. So I guess the question is, what do you think is still missing for this to be truly useful in education and applied to what you do?
That's actually a question we were asking ourselves, which is why we did our own research, and we recorded videos from the math interventions, and we recorded the interactions between the teachers and the student, one teacher and one student, one-on-one. And we then transcribed it and then looked really at each line that the student and the teacher said and categorized it into certain areas based on what was the trigger, actually, how the teacher decided to do that or say that. And in fact, there is a lot of things that the teacher is monitoring. It's not just the knowledge, whether the student got it right or not. They have to monitor the cognitive load, or they have to monitor the self-esteem, motivation. Fatigue is sometimes just taking too long and you can no longer work with the child, or the attention. So there are a lot of other variables than just the knowledge that the teacher is monitoring, and simply we don't have the data for that. We are not able right now to measure how tired the child is, or of the self-esteem. The teacher, when they see that the child may be on the brink of crying sometimes, which might happen in the special education environment. We just had a recording last week with a child that was in the 4th grade and didn't really understand concepts from the 1st grade. But he knew that it is 1st grade curriculum. So when he failed at that, he was just starting to cry because he knew it's something he was supposed to do. So my colleague actually had to intentionally kind of break the methodology and go a little bit up to try to explain the exchange and addition and subtraction on a little bit higher numbers, even though that's not usually what you should do. But it helped that child to feel a bit better about failing. If he doesn't understand something that is maybe a bigger numbers, then it's okay. So these are kind of decisions that the human has to do, and it's not about that the AI couldn't do it, but we don't have a way to measure it right now. So I believe that's the biggest bottleneck. Maybe some technology will come in the future that will allow us to do that, but we are definitely not there. And the knowledge part is just, I think, smaller part of the whole package of what the teacher actually does during the math interventions.
And probably also in a setting in K-12 or for kids, even much more so than for adults, right?
Sure, and especially if they have some other special education needs. They might have attention disorders or dyslexia or some other aphasia, for example, so it makes it much harder.
And just a final question on this. Do you think there's more need for this now? How do you sort of see the students evolving and the needs of students in societies that have changed a lot over just the last couple of years?
I think it definitely is a topic, like special education or equality in education. That is definitely more and more popular. In a lot of countries went through some kind of process of inclusion, which means like placing all the kids together in the same classes, which makes it much harder for the teachers to actually teach, and they have to have some tools that make it easier for them. So I think that trend will definitely continue. And I see a lot of, even from the EU perspective, it's one of the priorities, and there are conferences about it, and some even funding support for the projects in this area. So I see a lot more interest in special education than, for example, 10 years ago, for sure.
And if you now take a step back and look at the company since you started it, what's been the biggest challenge and how did you solve it?
Yeah, I think the biggest challenge was the part I described in the previous question about getting to know what is actually the role of the teacher. But the tricky part is that the teachers sometimes don't even know it themselves. And this is called implicit knowledge. It's just they do it kind of automatically, and if you would ask them before, they wouldn't tell you that they are doing it. And it's just only after you record it and ask them, why did you say that in this situation, they kind of realize, oh, okay, I was reacting to that. So for the knowledge itself, there is a lot of literature. Fortunately, with maths, there is a lot of research you can rely on about what works and how the things might be connected. And in general, math is researched a lot. There are still a lot of gaps, but compared to, let's say, financial literacy, there is a lot of research you can actually base your app on, which is not everyone does it for some reason, but that's another story. But this part, this kind of inexplicit knowledge that comes from the experience of the teacher, that's a little bit more hidden. And this has been a challenge for us to digitize and put in the app. And I think we are still at the beginning of doing that. So I would still say that has not been solved to our full satisfaction.
Okay, really interesting. And if you look at resources and support that you've been able to get along the way, is there something that you would highlight, something that really made a difference on your journey as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, support from Vodafone Foundation helped us a lot. They gave us the first little bit of money for creating the prototype. And without it, that would probably not be possible. More recently, we were part of the Impact EdTech Accelerator, which meant that we were among the top 8 startups in Europe in EdTech. And this allowed us, first of all, to get more funding for starting the math. And also it helped us to build the international contacts. So this is a main reason why we were able eventually to run the pilots in 15 countries, because we met a lot of interesting people from various countries in there, and we were able to get in touch with their friends and friends of their friends, and this is how the pilots were made possible. So definitely I would highlight that. And regarding the know-how, what's been interesting in English-speaking countries, mainly UK, there has been a movement in the last 10 years towards more evidence-based education, and EdTech tools, of course, as well. And I think what made the difference was that suddenly the teachers starting to write about how to use this like cognitive science research practically in classrooms. And this is something we are definitely capitalizing on, and it allowed us to learn how to explain the research to the teachers as well. That's been definitely helpful. So books like why don't students like school from Daniel and Willingham, specifically for maths. Craig Barton, How I Wish I Taught Maths. These are all great examples of like how to practically apply the research, educational research in classes, which for us means how can we explain to the teachers how the app works and what kind of ideas it is based on. So that's been a big source of inspiration. And of course, we are getting inspiration from other companies as well. There are companies like in US, Renaissance Learning. They are very good at doing the assessment. So we are looking at how they do the research there. And there is Eduten in Finland, which is a case study in how to sell your country brand. They are basing it on like Finland's education. And they do a really good job at analytics. They're providing analytics to students, teachers, and even the whole municipalities. Or Mathific, Australian company that just builds in on quantity. They have a lot of exercises and are very hard on localization. They're in many languages. Or the Qubits or Khan Academy for explaining things in math. So there is definitely a lot of other companies doing a good job in math. And we are trying to learn from them too. So that's interesting to watch for us.
And if you look forwards in the next 6 to 12 months, what is keeping you up at night?
It's definitely the international expansion. The biggest question is how to replicate the success we have in the Czech Republic and some surrounding countries, in other countries as well. And that's definitely the priority number one. And if we figure out a way how to do this in other countries, there's definitely a way for us to get much bigger, maybe even take some funding. But we need to figure out a way to do so. So that's definitely my highest priority right now.
Yeah, and a common one for many entrepreneurs inside and outside EdTech, right?
Yes, sure.
And if there's any advice you could give to other EdTech startups, what would it be?
Definitely look at the pedagogical research. For some reason, that is still kind of undervalued in startups. There are a lot of startups that still played on the learning styles, which have been debunked a lot of years ago, on just focusing too much on the fun part. It's like making something fun, making maths fun, making reading fun. That usually leads to nowhere. I have a list of companies that died who tried to do that. When you try to focus only on the fun, you are eventually competing with everything that is fun. So I still believe that the educational value is more important, like finding a way how to help teachers. It's probably going to work better in the long term. And there's the other startup general advice, just trying to understand what the real problem is. That helped us a lot to be able to specify the situation. In our case, it is teachers that see that they are trying very hard to teach a student something, let's say multiplication, and the student is trying as well, but it's falling flat, like it leads to nowhere. So this is the situation where we want to jump in, because now we can help the teacher to find out what the students really doesn't know, and they can go back and we have the diagnostic, and like everything kind of fits into place when we were able to find this specific practical situation, real pain point in the education, and like build everything around it. And that took us time. It's very hard to come up with it just from the blank slate. So it takes time, a lot of feedback, a lot of thinking, a lot of trying to present the app to someone. But the clarity helps a lot. Once you get it, it suddenly makes it much easier to make the decisions and decide what the priorities should be and what you should do. So the understanding of that problem, I think, is what would help a lot of startups to speed up.
Very good tips. Is there anything else you want to share with the ecosystem?
Just join the EdTech Garage for sure. I would love to meet more people there. It's very nice to be speaking with other EdTech entrepreneurs and see how it is in different countries. So as I mentioned, that the educational systems are different. This is really a good place to meet people from those educational systems and learn about how it works. So I've had a lot of interesting conversations for sure there.
Good, great to hear. And with that, that's my final question. So I just want to thank you so much, Michal, for coming on the show and sharing all your experience. I need to put my kids now in front of some of your apps to supercharge their math skills and other skills. So yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the EdTech Founders podcast from EdTech Garage. Find further episodes and more about the EdTech Garage network on edtechgarage.org.